once again to another episode of Heavy in the Paint. Gerald Brown here. You can also hear me on Sirius XM NBA Radio, as well as the nightcap on Mad Dog Sports Radio. Sirius XM NBA Radio, Channel 86, Mad Dog Sports Radio, Channel 82. But you know what? I'm here right now with a gentleman I call a friend because, again, met him many years ago. And one thing I can say from then till now, his baseball insight is on point. And you know what? Again, he knows his stuff. The one and only Mr. Ricky Keeler is joining me. Ricky, first and foremost, always appreciate your time. This Juan Soto thing, it's funny because, you know, when the World Series was over, or better yet, during the course of the season, there were conversations where Juan said, hey, I'd be open to listening to a deal right now. And, you know, Hal Steinbrenner said, oh, that's bleeding Yankees. We don't do things like that. And clearly we know Scott Boras is going to throw all these teams in here, and some of the stuff in Juan's post-game press conference after the World Series, like he was going to listen to all these teams. And it was just really the Tampa Bay Rays were in there. And I was like, it's no disrespect, but it was like, wait a minute. Is it about winning, as he was saying, or is it about the money? It was so many different things that I said, okay, he's reading this all as to drive up the price. But now I'm starting to get a little worried because I've heard the little tidbits that it was a great meeting with the Red Sox. The Mets could be the competition for the Yankees. When you look at this overall thing with Juan Soto, what is your biggest takeaway from this whole free agency frenzy with Soto being at the forefront?
Well, here's the thing. You're and always a pleasure to talk to you, Gerald. I always enjoy it. You're not going to hear that these meetings are terrible. It's like you're gonna if I'm meeting with the team, I'm not going to hear, man, that meeting with the Dodgers was awful. He's not like it's like when you go to surgery and never hear someone has a bad surgery. So I take that with a grain of salt whenever I hear that. To me, I look at the Soto situation and there's a reason this guy turned down 15 years and $440 from the Nationals back when he was in Washington. He wants the cash. Now he wants to win. I think both can be exclusive. When you look at the markets he's been talking to, the Red Sox are trying to get back in contention. The Blue Jays, of course, want to start winning. The Mets, of course, get to the NLCS, and the Yankees are in the World Series. So those are the four teams, and let's say the Dodgers, defending champions, and maybe the Phillies, they're always in playoff contention. So he wants to win over the course of the contract. The thing I would have not a problem with, I think he wants a $600+ million deal, and that's what happens when you have Scott Boras as your agent. And Scott Boras is going to drive up this price. The thing is, Scott Boras knows he's got so many other clients, he can't keep Soto going to January because other teams need options. I think this is one that gets done in the next couple of weeks. A lot of the Jeff Passons of the world think the winter meetings. I could definitely see that happening because teams need to find plan B, plan C, and all those things. Look, he's an impact player wherever he goes. I mean, he's 26 years old. He's going to be a star. We saw it in New York that he's able to be a star. But after the World Series, when he made those comments about free agency, I was like, I don't necessarily think he's coming back to the Yankees. They still might, but there's no Yankee appeal. I mean, the appeal is different. Judge at least homegrown Yankee, finish your career Yankee, be in Monument Park. Does Juan Soto care about that? And if he doesn't, that's okay. We have to figure out what Juan Soto actually wants. And I think that's what's interesting to see at these meetings is how are these teams pitching him and what is he looking for? It's not as mysterious as Ohtani, but it's not as clear, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, when you say that, though, Ricky, because, I think at one point during the course of the playoffs and the season, and I just kept saying that, the best thing that could ever happen for the Yankees is that they won and he played an intricate role in that, right? All the way across the board, like, he was embraced by Yankee, fans and, the media. He was embraced. He handled Yankee New York, right? He handled it. And I said, why else would you want to go somewhere, right? Because if what's the saying? If you could do it here, you could do it anywhere. But then I thought about the fact is, I'm not saying he was on that same level, but Robinson Cano, homegrown guy, it's like, hey, you want to compete, you want to play for World Series championships and stuff. He took that money and went to Seattle, and obviously his career was never the same. So I don't know, and I've heard the different things about guys saying, they shouldn't pay all this money and all this stuff. I'll ask you, Ricky, that type of money, $600 million or plus, $500 million plus. I think that we're just in a climate that, look, God rest his soul, if Jackie Robinson was playing today, he probably would be worth that type of money. Babe Ruth would be worth that type of money. When you look at the numbers, do you really sit back and say a team should really sign him for that amount of money? Or do you just believe the fact is that he's not really worth that much money in any baseball player in today's game?
I think he's worth the money just because the guy's in his late 20s. I mean, how often does a guy in his late 20s or mid 20s even get to free agency? And you can have him for 10, 12, 13, 14 years. He has generational type talent, and he's had it ever since he came up with the Nationals. And there's no reason to think that he's going to be a different player. He handles the media well. He's got the swagger that you love. He's got the power you love. And the best part for him, unlike Cano, who chose the money to go endorse Starbucks and umbrellas in rainy Seattle, you mentioned why would Juan want to leave? He doesn't have to. There's another borough that's still New York that he can play in. Like, I think that, and he's got Steve Cohen. And Steve Cohen's got cash. Like, the one thing you look at is how many teams can actually afford that contract. If the Yankees give him that contract, if you believe Hal Steinbrenner, they're not going to go past $300 million in payroll. So you're looking at Soto and what else? And we know how limited the Yankees were and how exposed they got by the Dodgers in the World Series. Can they really fix that? While you have the team in Queens that doesn't have the Scherzer money anymore, doesn't have the Verlander money anymore, doesn't have Alonso right now, has all this money to play with, and a smart GM in David Stearns. I mean, that is a smart president in David Stearns. That is a really dangerous combination. So it all depends on who wants to pay it. Toronto has the money, just nobody wants to take it. And Boston, I'll believe Boston spends again when I see it, because we haven't seen the Red Sox act like a big market team in years. So I think Soto is worth the money. The problem is, in this day and age, not a lot of teams either have it or are willing to spend it. And that, we've talked about it before, that's just a league-wide problem more so than a Soto-wide problem.
Yeah. Ricky Keeler joining me here on Heavy in the Paint. Ricky, you mentioned about, obviously, in Queens, and right, the Mets were really, let's be honest, an underachieving team. I'm just calling what it is. And maybe that's the Yankee fan blood in me. They were an underachieving team, but they got hot at the right moment, and they rolled this wave all the way through. We witnessed them going out spending money on Scherzer. We witnessed them going out and getting Verlander. It didn't work out, right? It didn't really work out. When you look at them and you look at just putting yourself in perhaps maybe Soto's in that space of, if you're Juan Soto, you went to the World Series with a Yankees team that was in the running from the beginning of the season to the end. And yeah, a lot of people can make, comments about, yes, we understand the Dodgers, the defensive side, it really wasn't sharp, but those things are all fixable. You got a lineup where you got a MVP guy, it's going to be MVP, and Aaron Judge there. Giancarlo Stanton, obviously, with him in that lineup, Soto, I think clearly he benefited the most from that. And then you got young players like Volpe, Wells, and then Hill. You still have a lot of movable pieces there that if you put Soto in there and you say, hey, look, we shore up first base and decide what we're going to do at the second base, and then you got Jason Dominguez there, I don't think that the Yankees, you could just write them off if they had Juan Soto. So I'm saying to you, if you're Juan Soto and you look at the Yankees, I mean, pretty much it doesn't seem like that's a team that couldn't get back to the World Series. How do you view the Yankees in terms of just what they would offer to a guy like Juan Soto, especially with just seems like minor tweaks that they need to make?
Oh, their path is much easier. I mean, we saw it this year, but the fact they had to go through the AL Central to get to the World Series, which is what the Yankees love to do, it was probably their best time to get to the World Series in years, and they took advantage of that, and they shouldn't apologize for that. Look, they could offer a lot to Juan Soto. I mean, they could offer, of course, the fans love him, offering with Aaron Judge, as you mentioned, consistent winning opportunity year in and year out. That's not to say the Yankees don't have the pitch. But when you're paying Garrett Cole $30 million a year, and you're paying Stanton for the next 3 years, and you're paying Judge $40 million a year, there's only so many contracts they can give out. And you mentioned, yes, you've got the kids, and that's great. But can the kids play first base? Can the kids play second base? Like, that's going to be something I think that's interesting where the Yankees, remember, they have to replace some of their bullpen as well. So that's going to be more so what they look at. Soto's a fit. Don't get me wrong. And I pay the money if I'm Hal Steinbrenner, as I think they should. But does Soto want to be the 1B to Judge? And I think I look at a guy that loves being the alpha. And yes, Lindor is the alpha with the Mets, but once Soto goes to the Mets, he's a star. He is the guy that is on every season ticket, everything. And the Mets right now, I've also started to build more sustainable winner with Stearns. I mean, think about what Stearns did last year. They didn't spend on anything. I mean, they took a flyer on Severino, took a flyer on Manaea, took a flyer on Quintana. They didn't make that blockbuster move. They brought in Mendoza, which Yankee bench coaches seem to do better than the actual Yankee manager. But they find ways to win and get to the NLCS in a year they weren't supposed to do anything. Now you throw Soto in there, and it changes the dynamic. And imagine giving Lindor protection in that lineup, what Lindor can be. And actually maybe gets off to a better start. I think this is one that Steve Cohen just wants to win. Steve Cohen wants the back pages. Steve Cohen wants the Mets to be in the forefront. And this is the kind of guy to do it with. It's not what the Yankees can or can't offer. I just think the Mets have more money to play with. And the question is Soto all about the money, or how much less would he be willing to take to stay here? I don't think he has that much 1 year of loyalty enough to turn down that much money.
We had a situation where we witnessed with the Dodgers and what you had Ohtani able to do. You think we will see other teams and other players, maybe Soto, look to start to defer a lot of their money in order to help their teams continue to stay competitive?
I think that was a rare thing, Gerald. I think Ohtani realized that, hey, I'm going to make all this money in endorsements. I'm going to make all this money afterwards, and deferring a lot of it to bring other stars in, to bring a Yamamoto in. Ohtani, I think, is just a rare, both on the field player and off the field player. Look, Soto wants the cash, and it's okay to want the present day cash. We all not everybody's in that circumstance where they can defer money. They might be able to defer part of the money, but I don't think we've seen the Nationals defer part of Max Scherzer's contract. They won a World Series, and you're not talking about Scherzer the way the Mets talk about Bobby Bonilla. You've seen deferrals before. That was just a weird looking deferral that Ohtani did, but you're only in that position. I mean, Ohtani has had a contract with so many unique clauses in it, but that's the place he wanted to go the whole time. I don't think you'll see stars do that, because I think in baseball, you don't normally see guys take less money, especially in a non-salary cap sport, even though there is the Steve Cohen tax and the CBT threshold. You're not going to see that. And it's just going to be a matter of how do you build a team with enough stars and enough young, talented players to make things work. To me, the Ohtani thing is just 1 in a million. I don't think you'll see guys defer that much money. Might for a little bit, but not that much.
Let me ask you a question. Let's go around the league. I'm going to make you the commissioner of Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball, I think, was the biggest winner out of all of this with their playoffs, because they got what they needed, they got what they wanted, and they pretty much, again, 5 games. Yes, I would have loved to have seen it gone 7, but clearly baseball was back on the forefront, and being in a situation where they were able to take full advantage of the market. I don't know if it phased out, but you know what? Major League Baseball, it's going to be edited. Major League Baseball really won this World Series, and I'll say even the playoffs. What do you think will be the main thing for baseball, MLB, to follow up what happened with the playoffs and stuff, and really re-energizing a sport that really needed something?
It was just the perfect story. I mean, to get Yankees, Dodgers in a World Series, the things people predict in Sports Illustrated for like 10, 15 years, to finally actually have that happen was special. And I think it was just a matter of the big markets that we're in. I mean, you look at having both New York teams in, being able to get the craziness of the wild card series, even though we haven't really had that classic wild card series. While most of these series end in sweeps, we had the crazy finishes with the Mets against Milwaukee, Lindor's grand slam, Freeman's grand slam in the World Series, Soto's home run against Cleveland. There were so many great moments that made that postseason special. It wasn't just great games, it was just great moments in itself. But you look at where the game is now, and I think it's just more teams have opportunities. I mean, think about Paul Skeens going into next year and the Pirate fan that now feels optimistic. And you got Kansas City can make it to the playoffs, and Cleveland can get to an ALCS with a first-year manager. Milwaukee wins a division with a first-year manager. It really just the competitive balance, I think, is more there now because you don't have that dominant team. Yeah, the Dodgers were great. I never looked at them as dominant this year. It's probably one of their worst teams considering they had no pitching. I mean, they won a World Series with 3 starting pitchers. So when you have San Diego relevant and the Giants now with Posey as president, what do? There's so many teams that can make a case for themselves. That's what keeps the game going, keeps markets going, because when you have a 162-game season, you need as many teams to be competitive as possible. I think you're kind of seeing it now with going to sport you love in the NBA. I was looking at the standings of the day in the East. There's only 4 teams over 500 about a quarter of the way through the year, and they wonder why ratings are down. Baseball, to me, at least needs the teams to be more teams relevant, the better. Now, that ruins the elite teams, but in a way, it makes the playoffs more dramatic and makes you want to watch every night, that nothing is predictable. And while we had a predictable World Series, it was a different route to get there. I mean, Dodgers were down 2-1 to San Diego. That could have gone either way. That's what's going to make this playoffs and make the sport special. It's not adding teams, just the fact that more teams are willing to spend and willing to try to win that makes it better.
Yeah, I think you need David and Goliath. You can't have 2 Davids going against each other. You know, as often said, a Tampa Bay, Phillies, Texas, and Arizona. Those are regional World Series. You need David versus Goliath, or you need 2 Goliaths to really carry the sport. And then the playoffs as a whole, you had big major markets from New York having 2 teams there. You had California having 2 teams involved and stuff. So it really helped some of these mid-major cities and stuff like that in the markets to be able to carry that, really, really lent to the excitement of the World Series. Give me a free agent that is out there that's not named Juan Soto that you'll be watching carefully to see where this free agent ends up at.
All right, I'll give you a pitcher and I'll give you a hitter. Pitcher-wise, I'm interested in Max Fried from Atlanta. I wonder if he'll go back to the Braves. It's a guy with a lot of talent, but a lot of injuries over the last year or so. Second on the market, probably to Corbin Burns. Burns, I think we know, is going to get that contract that he wants. I'm interested to see how much teams pay for Fried when there's a Severino and there's a Minaya and there's other pitchers on the market, how long he lasts. And on the hitter side, Anthony Santander. I mean, AL East fans know him well with the Orioles. He's had a really good last couple of years. Do the Orioles and Mike Elias pay up and try to actually keep him in Baltimore? Or does a team like, all right, somebody misses out on Juan Soto. There's probably the second best outfielder on the market. He's not flashy. He's not dominant, but he's consistent. He's been a consistent player that's going to get you the numbers you expect. You can plug that in and make your team work. And I think he's you make the case second best hitter in the market. I know people talk about Alex Bregman, but how much are you willing to pay Bregman with Boris as his client and potentially him wanting so much that he goes till January, February looking for a deal because he's kind of in the latter stages of his career. Again, to me, the team to watch would be the Orioles. Do they pay up with Burns? Do they pay up with Santander? And they actually put the money in because they didn't really take advantage of the deadline last year. Can they take advantage of the offseason and actually keep what they have to stay on the path they're on?
Yeah. Ricky, before I let you get on out of here, I look at Paul Skeens and seeing him win the Rookie of the Year and all, obviously Luis Hill. But it just seems like Garrett Cole all over again. And the way I look at it, it's like, he's not going to be there long term. And that's the unfortunate thing. When I look at Skeens, you look at Ellie De La Cruz that's in Cincinnati. These are the players of the next generation. And, Bobby Witt signed this long-term deal in Kansas City. But when you look at those two players in particular, how much does baseball really need these two players to be able to stay with those organizations at least maybe 8 to 10 years to really have sort of, in a sense, a broader, appeal for Major League Baseball?
I think, especially for the Pirates, can you get Pittsburgh got to get some offense for this guy? But the fact that Skeens won Rookie of the Year actually gives him one less year he has to stay in Pittsburgh. So the Pirates, when they could have just shut him down and actually got the extra year, kept pitching him. He won Rookie of the Year. He's going to now be a free agent up to 29. It'd be good to keep him there because you look at Pittsburgh, what they're building with him and Jared Jones, there's at least a foundation, but they got to find bats. And Cincinnati with De La Cruz, what's the problem with the Reds? They never have pitching. Can those guys either, if you want to spend and keep them, you kind of have to lock them up before they're a year away from free agency or you have no shot. And that's going to be, I think, something to be interesting to watch over the next couple of years. Because if you're De La Cruz, you don't want to end up like Mike Trout, who's in Anaheim and Los Angeles now wondering if he's ever going to win because he started to stay and didn't work out for him. I think the more competitive markets, as I said earlier, you have the better. Like Bobby Witt makes Kansas City relevant, makes them a team you want to watch. And it kind of fits the identity of that team. Skeens and De La Cruz fit the identities. And in NL Central, that's very winnable. I don't look at Milwaukee as a super team. St. Louis is tearing it down. The Cubs, I don't know what they are. So those two markets, Pittsburgh and Cincinnati in particular, have really good opportunities. Reds have kind of blown theirs and had to fire their manager and now have to kind of reset. Pirates, that's going to be a lot of pressure on Derek Shelton next year because they have an opportunity to win. And I'm not saying you have to win the division, but you kind of have to at least be competitive into September. And if Paul Skeens doesn't see that, he's a guy with the clout he has and the reputation he's got, that he's going to expect high expectations. But the cautionary tale is, take a look at Steven Strasburg. Steven Strasburg got the lifetime contract in Washington, and once he got it, he never stayed healthy again. So to me, if I'm the Pirates and Reds, I'm looking, at least in Pittsburgh's case with Skeens, how am I competitive the longer I have him? And then I worry about the contract a couple of years down the road. You've set the foundation. Now you have to keep building on it.
Yeah. Well, Ricky, we're pretty much a couple weeks out or so with the winter meetings. It seems like it's going to set up to be a unbelievable winter meetings, and hopefully get you back on and really talk about these winter meetings because it's going to be a lot of moving and shaking, especially once the first domino, the Juan Soto deal comes through, wherever he decides to land. It's going to really open up. So definitely look forward to talking to you then. Listen, my friend, have a wonderful holiday. Always a pleasure, man. I appreciate the insight. And I'm going to keep my fingers and toes crossed that definitely, hopefully, Soto ends back up with the Yankees. And we'll figure out what they're going to do with first base and second. And if they decide what they're going to do with third, if Gleyber doesn't come back.
Likewise, always a pleasure, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I think that's what, to have both the New York teams involved in this, it's a sweepstakes like no other, and interested to see how it plays out.
And Ricky, before we let you get out of here, let people know where they can catch your stuff and everything that you have going on.
So you can follow me on X at Rickinator555. You catch me on New York State of Sports on IE Sports Radio every Monday at noon. We'll be talking Soto because we can't sure talk about the Giants and Jets anymore because they NFL in New York is ruined before Thanksgiving. It's ridiculous. But we talk all things New York sports, from NFL to NBA, NHL. We do soccer. We do everything New York, college football. We were previewing Army Notre Dame this week, which is a really big game that between two top 20 teams. So be sure to check that out again every Monday at noon. NY State of Sports. Follow that account at NY State Sports IE. Catch some of my work on Metsmerized and Mets Miners, doing some stuff there. But yeah, tune in. I appreciate the time.
He's one of the best in the business. Ricky Keeler, right here. Heavy in the Paint. Peace.